Good day and welcome to Quilting with Don Bargello. I'm Don. This is the second episode where I'm going to walk me through making a Bargello quilt. If you're just tuning in, I am going to make a Bargello quilt in a design that's offered by Elaine Wright, and this is her book. It is More Twist and Turn Bargello Quilts. Specifically, I'm going to do the one that's on the cover. You can see it on the screen there. It's called an argyle pattern, but I'm going to take it one level further with the color choices. But wait a sec, I'll get to that. You may notice, if you've been watching this at all, that this looks a little different. This looks a little different than what you've seen before. That's because it is. I relocated my sewing and, if you will, quilting area to our dining room. The reason for that is simple. Carolyn has always got something on the go, and in reality, when I was using part of her space before, especially when I've been making quilts, it was impinging on her freedom of movement. And therefore, she kindly requested that I use another place for my stuff. So here we are. Here is my quilting studio. All mine. I'm using the dining room table and an ironing board to sort this out. Now, this is our dining room, so it's not exactly purpose-built for quilting, but it does have a nice view. The haze is from the wildfires that the west coast of Canada and the United States are all getting. So that's not the greatest situation, but right now on Vancouver Island, we're doing okay. So back to the quilting area. Obviously, you have the large table, which is good for the cutting mats and the rulers for cutting. Got my paperwork, my designs, my stuff, and my glasses, and of course, the trusty Singer sewing machine that I use for the other two quilts I've done so far. It works really well. It's fairly basic, but it works. And it also has a nice backup feature too. So Carolyn's old machine, Singer, does not. So I'm definitely taking advantage of the modern technology. You'll see behind me a quilt from 2 quilts ago. It's called Lap Kitties. I did this. It's a rail fence quilt. You can see the rail fence pattern and the black kitty appliques, which are so cute. There's also quite a bit of cat fabric. The border is made with a really cool cat fabric pattern. The back has it as well. I had a lot of fun making that quilt. And then more recently, of course, I did Vista boxes. But now, let's get on to the star of the show, is the Bargello quilt. So, I am going to call this the Eye of Sauron. This is a Lord of the Rings themed quilt because when Carolyn and I were looking at this pattern, actually she noticed it first, said, "Oh, that looks like an eye." And I don't know how I jumped to the conclusion that looks like the Eye of Sauron, or Sauron, pardon me. So what I did is initially had an idea in my head to use reds, yellows, and oranges for the eye and a black for the pupil, of course, and then blues for the surrounding concept. And so I used some computer magic to see how that would look. First, I created the quilt grid that's provided by the pattern. Here it is. And then I filled in the blues. There are 20 different variations of blue in this. This is how the pattern works. 20 different colors of blue. 20 different colors in general. And then I worked on the eye, and here it is. You can see that the eye goes from a black pupil right to yellow, which runs into the oranges and then runs into the reds and the dark reds and finally finishes with a black edge around. So I think that's going to look really good. That's the plan. And while I was shopping at Missouri Star for my latest fabrics, I picked up this 3-yard by 3-yard piece of flannel. It's going to be, this rack is going to become my design wall. So I'll be able to hopefully fit most, if not all, of the strips that I use and make for the Bargello quilt. I'll get more into the process of how this works in the next episode, and to give Eileen Wright props, this book is very well laid out and very clear on how to do just that. So if you're thinking about doing a Bargello, you can't go wrong by looking up one of Eileen Wright's books. She certainly knows what she's doing, and she clearly has experience in making Bargello quilts. I thought I'd show you one other thing I did when I was figuring out how to do this quilt, was to determine how much fabric I needed. And Eileen Wright does provide clear direction on the estimate for the fabric. But I did the Dawn math thing, and what I did was I actually take her pattern and I'll show you my worksheet. Don't try to get into this too much. This helped me think. But what I did is I lined up every row, vertical row that's in the quilt with the size of that strip, that cut strip. And then I was able to calculate how much of each strip set I would need and ultimately how many strip sets I would need to create this quilt. Using a bit of creativity, I would take some chunks of fabric of the strip that were not used on a given row and put it into another row that needed it. So for example, if you look at row 1, the very top left, you'll see that where it says blue left over at the top, I was able to reuse colors 1 through 14 into row 9. And if you look down at row 9, you can see that I use actually colors 1 through 10, so there's a couple left over. And I did that process throughout all the colors to see exactly what I needed. And it ended up determining that for the blues, I need 6 full strip sets of colors 1 to 20. Remember, there's 20 blues. But I'm able to get away with 1 strip set of just colors 1 to 15 and 1 strip set of colors 1 to 10. I did this, that's to save some fabric, right? To save some cutting, but it's also just being efficient. I did the same thing for the reds, because the eye fabric uses quite a bit less. In fact, in total it uses 4 strip sets. But even then, only one of those strip sets needs to be all the colors, and then it ramps down for the remaining 3 sets. So I know it's a little detailed. I apologize if it's too much, but it helped me understand exactly how I'm going to use the fabric that I've got. Et voila, as they say in French. Here's my blues. 20 fabrics from a very light blue through to a very dark blue. This was quite the adventure getting there, between what I had found at Fabricland, what I found from Carolyn's stash, what I found from Missouri Star. I was able to put this together and figure it out. A cool trick I did is turn this into, use a camera to make this into black and white. That really helps to determine if the tones also flow. Not only the colors, but things truly go from light to dark. So I'm showing you on the screen now my first cut at it, and there was a couple things that weren't quite right. I did another shot at it, did another tweak, and it took 3 iterations to get what you see here. But I came up pretty good. Now let's just, because I know you're just dying to see it, let's do a close-up now of the fabric. Here you see some solids, some wonderful little pattern prints, some marbleized colors, bit of everything, right? I mean, that's the idea. Right through to even something with a few dots on it, and a very dark blue at the end. So there you have my blues. Wait one, and we'll take out the reds. Ta-da! Here are the reds, if you will, which actually are yellow through orange to red to dark red to black. There are technically 20 different colors in the pattern, but I'm using the black for the pupil, and that actually takes up colors 1, 2, and 3. So then the yellow is color number 4, that runs through the reds to color number 19, and once again black is going to be color number 20. That's how I'm laying out the eye to look like what you saw. And here it is again. These fabrics are going to make up that eye. And just like we did before with the blues, I did the black and white thing. Here's what it looked like to figure out that this was a good sequencing of light to dark. A very pale yellow, brighter yellow, merging into orange, some solids, some swirls, even some of the leftover Vista boxes fabric I had from Northcott. And into the reds, which almost are verging into the browns, and finally the black at the end. One other thing I did for the blues already, I'm going to do it for the reds, but I'm not going to subject you to it, is actually number each one of these fabrics with a piece of tape so that I don't lose the order. Because as you can imagine with this Bargello, it's going to be very critical that you do not lose the order of your fabrics. You have to make sure that those strips and the strip sets you're going to make always stay in the right order. And I'm going to go from there. So, next thing is going to be starting to cut fabric into 2.5-inch strips, assembling 20 strips into a strip set, and then using those strip sets to start using to make the vertical rows for the Bargello. Sounds fairly straightforward, but it's not. Once again, Eileen Wright in her book really explains well the process to use to make sure everything works out. And I'll get into more of those details in the next episode. One last thing is that I'm hoping to convince Carolyn, my trusty quilt advisor, to actually do a Quilting with Carolyn video or YouTube thing. It'd be more instructional than what I do. Mine is just, hopefully you get to watch it and you see, yeah, you see where I go wrong and you can see my thought processes. But Carolyn, being the expert that she is, I thought she could actually teach something pretty cool. She's hesitant to do so. She's not a big fan of being in front of the camera. So, but if you'd like to see something from Carolyn, by all means, let me know through the comments. And see if we can together convince Carolyn to do something on YouTube, because she's actually taught classes before at her local guilds, and she's very good at it. Right. It wouldn't be Quilting with Dawn unless I actually had a celebratory something to say, you know, good job, Dawn. You got to this stage of the game. So, Lord of the Rings theme. I talked to Carolyn and said, what would be a fitting theme for Lord of the Rings? She said, drink something like you were a hobbit. So I got my tankard here. Ooh. I got my trusty tankard here. I picked this one up actually while the first time I was serving it was NATO in Belgium at the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe. So it's got some memento value to it. I've got my tankard. I got my trusty, this is very cool. It's a bottle opener, a bottle opener with Mickey Mouse ears. It's a Mickey Mouse bottle opener. We actually got this in Disney, and it is my absolute favorite. It's got a great heft to it. It's easy to fit in the palm of your hand, and it works every time. It's just a great bottle opener. And then I raided my fridge. I didn't have appropriate ale, but I do have a good Belgian beer, and you know how I am partial to Belgian beer. So this is what it's going to be. So here's my toast to. Oh, it's foaming up. Yeah, maybe I should have rinsed this this tankard out first. Anyway, here's to Quilting with Dawn, Bargello, and I guess toasting myself to here's to happy quilting. And we'll see where this goes. Hope you all have a great one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers. Or rather, you'll see me next time. Cheers.